coffee. I think a cat's trying to get in my room.
Hello, editing me here, just to say I did have a little cry after I rewatched this, and you probably need to be aware that I am going to talk about being physically ill. So if you're not good with that, don't watch it. And also, I seem to give advice right at the end, so I will put a timestamp in to point you towards just the general advice at the end if you don't want to listen to stuff about chronic illness, disability, and all the crap that went on last year, because I know sometimes it's really helpful to hear that from someone else and sometimes it is just not. So have a look in the doobly and I will put a timestamp down there. Enjoy.
This is a video I've been wanting to make for a really long time. I thought about making it back in September, but I don't think enough time had passed to make this productive, useful. The initial idea had been to just ask you lot on the interwebs some questions, and I have done that. I asked on Twitter, Instagram and Tumblr what you might like to know about my MA, just in case you're thinking about doing one or you're just curious. I've started a new job recently where I get to do student support for other students from a variety of backgrounds, and it's so fascinating just seeing what kind of things they cover in their lectures, their seminars, what their course entails. So if you are in either of those two categories, or you've done an MA and want to see what other people thought about their experience, this video is for you. But there are some things that you guys could not possibly have predicted that I would want to talk about, and so half the video is structured around questions people have asked me and half of it is structured around me just talking, which, as many of you will know, is never a good idea when I just talk. Without further ado, I'm going to dive just straight into the questions, because the longer I procrastinate doing this, the worse it's going to get and the more nervous I'm going to get about talking about it, and then I will just clam up and disaster will have befallen us all. Someone literally asked, what was your MA in? It was in early modern English literature, and it had this little kind of semicolon bit on the end, text and transmission. So what that means is that although we were looking at the literature, the words, we were also looking at the physical production, transmission, reception of the book or the written artefact and how it's survived in collections today. Someone asked me on Tumblr where I studied, because there was some confusion. I did my undergrad up in Warwickshire. So I studied at King's College London, in London, and most of the time we were based in the Virginia Woolf building, which is on the Kingsway near the Strand, and all around that kind of area near Bush House, Somerset House. However, lots of the time was also spent up the road on Chancery Lane in the Morn Library there, and we also had classes in the British Library. So we got to go behind the scenes and be taught by some of the heads of collections there, and that was more to do with the physical book. Okay, the next question is also from Tumblr, and I decided to split it into two because it was kind of two questions. So the first one was, could you give me an insight into the postgraduate department, its teaching, etc. So the postgraduate department at King's is spread over 2 floors. It is mixed in with the wider English department. I would say if you're thinking about doing an MA and looking for a strong community feel, maybe London isn't the one for you, because there's no dedicated postgrad space, and so a lot of people study at the library or at home rather than in situ. Teaching for me happened during term time, although my course was 51 weeks. So we had 4 hours of class time a week. We didn't have any lectures, it was only seminars, and then you were just left to your own devices. Teachers at King's are wonderful. They're so knowledgeable, so invested in their students. The best thing to do, because they are all massive nerds, as you would quickly discover, is ask them about their thing, because their faces just light up and you get almost like a 20-30 minute lecture out of them sometimes, just because they're so enthusiastic about what they research, what they study, and they want you to be that enthusiastic as well. So that's really lovely. That's one of my favourite things about my MA. And they teach you, or kind of train you, to ask better questions. And then the second half of that question was, and about your experience in general and whether I'd recommend it. So the MA, I actually loved it. The books were so interesting, the breadth of stuff that we covered. It's probably worth me listing the modules. So we did text and transmission, we did the material legacy of the book, which was at the one at the British Library. Then I chose to do Flatter and Fawn, which was about the early modern court. And I also did a module called Professing Writing, which was a module on different varieties of professional writing, so everything from science and the first books that looked at tiny things under a microscope to recipe books, pamphlets, religious texts, pretty much everything that was being produced in the early modern period where people could be considered to be professional writers. So in a lot of ways that means it was only things that were being published a lot of the time, as opposed to manuscript writing, which is on the whole more personal. And this was professing writing. The facilities were amazing, the teachers were amazing, they were so willing to meet you and discuss your ideas, although bless him, John, I used to nab him in the British Library coffee queue, so willingness, grey area. Before I go into the rest of this question, I do have a little disclaimer, which is that I am so lucky to have been able to do this MA. Regardless of everything else, I am in such a privileged position that my family paid for me to live in London for a year, do the Masters, so that made it possible. And I don't regret doing it, because that was a question that came up on an anonymous Instagram post, was, do you regret doing your Masters? Now I suspect this is from someone who knows me, because what I'm about to tell you might think that I do regret doing it, and there are bits of it that I wish hadn't happened, but that doesn't mean I regret the overall experience. This is why I struggled during my MA year, and it has very little to do with the coursework and the time at uni. The time at uni was actually great. So I started the year working as a bookseller as well as doing my MA. I transferred over from Cambridge Waterstones to Waterstones in London and was working weekends and then doing class during the week. I couldn't carry on doing this. I was getting exhausted, I was collapsing at work, I was unable to do my university work because I was so tired from work, and so I had to take the decision to stop working. Now, the fact that I decided I was going to do an MA based on having extra money coming in all the time, yeah, that didn't work out. So, on top of that, then because I had a very limited amount of money, I started off with £4,000 on my own savings, and I ended the year with minus £200. But I stopped doing all my extracurricular activities. So before, when I'd been playing in orchestras, singing, salsa dancing, I used to salsa dance for about 4 or 5 hours a week. Stopped doing that. And I was living in mixed halls, which, I mean, the freshers were lovely, but I was 21, 22 while doing my Masters, and Freshers Week. Oh, I am old. Leave me to sleep. And the halls I was in was teeny tiny. I mean, everywhere in London is, you basically end up living in a cupboard, but I spent a lot of time in my teeny tiny room. Here's the thing I really have been struggling to talk about, because I think I was in denial about this for quite a long time. I just soldiered on and thought, no, it's not that bad, it's not that bad, it's not that bad. I was so ill. I was so ill. So to give you a rundown, I'm type 1 diabetic. I always have been, I always will be. That's a pain on its own. But what was really getting me at work, and the reason I quit my job, was the fatigue and the chronic pain that I was experiencing but had no diagnosis for. I was suffering from migraines once or twice a month. My immune system was not happy. I'm just going to read you something that I wrote on the 25th of October 2018. It goes like this. I adore my course and the research opportunities it presents, but being in London the past month has been much more difficult than I thought it would be. Of course, it's normal to feel a little sad and rootless at first, however, lots of setbacks and random accidents have added stress and made me unfocused and frustrated. Having a productive day out has helped. So the day I wrote this, I was in Oxford at an exhibition with my course mates, which was great. A little holiday in Amsterdam should hopefully feel like a reset. Spoiler alert, it was not. Because the night before I went on, to Amsterdam via train, I was in the overnight doctors because I was peeing blood and had the worst UTI I've ever had in my life. So that was my holiday, was on antibiotics, in agony. I then got a stomach bug and then I got another UTI, just one after the other. I was also feeling incredibly low and the doctors were worried about my kidney function. By the 3rd of November I was struggling to stand up for more than 2 stops on the train and I was sleeping for 13 hours a day. If this is you, this is not normal. Please, please, please do not do what I did and try and struggle on, because it's a bad idea. Between this time and about May, I went to see my personal tutor about 3 separate times to discuss dropping out. And the reason I didn't drop out was financial. It was just that I wouldn't have been able to pay back the £10,000 that I owed the university. So I had to just carry on. So on the 10th of December, I was put on antidepressants for the first time. And then we have the Easter holidays. So I went to Dubai. I was very lucky to be able to go. However, the minute I got there, I did what can only be described as an impression of something from an Exorcist film in the desert, you know, step, puke, step, puke. I was so ill and I found out that my health insurance didn't cover me for something that they probably would argue was a pre-existing condition, because I would not have needed to go to hospital because of the vomiting. I would have needed to go to hospital because I was diabetic. So, stuck in a foreign country, thousands of miles from home, puking my guts up. Very, very scary. Very scary. And then the cherry on the delightful cake that was my life was that my mum came to the airport when I arrived home to pick me up, check me over and tell me that one of our family members had cancer. They're okay now, I will say that, but at the time it was nicht good. On top of that, I was going through diagnosis for what I now know is fibromyalgia. I found that out at the end of July. Things did settle down once I got into dissertation season, the weather improved, I really just got into my work, I was able to work to my own schedule, but by this point the money was really running out, and this is still something I struggle with in London, is that it is so hard to live in a city that is quite hostile to people who do not have a lot of money. Food, travel, expenses, if you want to go out and do anything that isn't going to a park or a museum, it's going to cost you money. And I didn't really have any. If you are thinking about doing a master's in London, save some money first. Right at the end of my MA, I was stressed, shaky, not sleeping. I've got some footage of me finishing my dissertation, which I may insert now. Greetings, it is now about 10:30, I think. My blood sugar levels are really high because of the stress. I literally feel like I've had about 4 cups of coffee. My teeth feel funny. That is the level we're at right now, but I've been doing a little plan of my research objectives, and it's pink and orange because things that are not aesthetic, but this is essentially what I want to write in my conclusion. Oh, and to top it all off, one of the undergraduate students was stealing my food. But thankfully my graduation day was so enjoyable that has kind of put a new ending on my masters, which is really nice actually, because the masters itself I really enjoyed. And going back to that question of do I regret it? No, I don't. I would not have met the people I met if I hadn't done the masters. I got the opportunity to work with Lambeth Palace Library and their amazing collection. I learned so much and I'm still in contact with people there. They are lovely. I had access to the best brains in the business as teachers. I would not have met Alex had I not done it. I would not be as resilient as I am now had I not done it. and I would not have spent as much time as I did in the British Library, which is an amazing place and you need to go if you haven't been. That is what I thought of my master's degree. That's why I struggled with it so much, and thank you for listening to me talk about it. I'm quite amazed I haven't cried actually. I cried while writing the answers down. I cried a lot because I think when you're in it you just have to keep going, and when you're out of it and you look back you go, oh my god, what was I doing? Why did I not stop? If you take away one thing from this, learn from my mistakes. Don't move to London with £4,000, and don't do it when you've got an undiagnosed medical condition. London is a fantastic city and you just have to be in the position to support yourself while you're there. My final words on the MA, if you're thinking of doing one, I would say if it is something that will definitely enrich your life, or it is something that allows you to make the next step in your career, do it. Do it, it's so worth it. It will push you so hard, but the people you'll meet and the things you will study are so worth it. If you're just thinking you're going to do it because you miss being a student, no, abort. Abort, don't do it. Don't do it. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions and got me thinking and got me writing. This has pretty much been a form of therapy. So if you made it to the end, hello. But I hope that may have been useful to someone, anyone. I'm thinking about doing a video about being disabled at university. I'm thinking about doing a video on the books I read, doing like profiles on different authors and some other book related stuff, because I feel like if I don't use what I learned in my MA for something, it's maybe not worth as much. Do you use your degree? If you've got a degree, are you thinking about doing an MA? Where are you thinking of doing it? Please let me know in the comments. Just let me know what you want to study, where. If you like this video, please give it a and thank you very much for watching.